And so what I did on every Nurture single release is I was actually bringing my phone into the shower and I had like hot water on me because I would be shivering. I'd be just like reading reactions, like texting my friends back, just like the most intense feeling of adrenaline and excitement, and then like seeing people's reactions to certain lyrics and to certain moments musically, and like seeing the things that people compare it to. Hi, I'm Porter Robinson, and these are my firsts for NME. The first artist I fell in love with, it's kind of ambiguous in my mind. The very first time I felt myself really noticing music was the song 1,000 Miles came on the radio by Vanessa Carlton, and I feel like you could layer 1,000 Miles with any of my songs and it would match. Like I feel like all my songs still feel like they have that same like sparkly, hopeful, melodic palette. And I just remember, I don't know if it was like I was like 12, I don't know if it was like adolescence, but I remember being like, wow, like she sounds really pretty. Like it was like almost like noticing a girl for the first time. Do you know what I mean? Like it really like her voice caught my ear, and I think I just like anchored on that sound so hard. But then my other sort of first love, my gut reflex answer to that is Discovery by Daft Punk. That's like my most cherished memories, holding that album and like looking at it. And like if you think about it, like Discovery was this fusion of really joyful, exuberant, colorful dance music, and it was released alongside an incredible anime film, Interstellar 5555, and like I anchored on that so hard. Like that combination of breathtaking visuals and fun but beautiful and emotional dance music, like I feel like I'm still chasing that to this day. I feel like that's like the dragon that I chase in a way. So yeah, both of those things are like really intertwined in my DNA. I feel like we just got spliced right in because I was like 12, 13 when I heard them, and like you kind of have to be careful if you're like 11 years old watching this right now, you want to become a musician one day, be very careful with your first 2 albums because you'll be nearly 30 and still trying to replicate those feelings. My first job was actually, it was music. I was really lucky in that sense that I started music when I was 12, and around the time I was 15 or 16, there was this, I was putting out my music onto this web forum, and I was contacted by this German record label called Yawa Recordings, and an affiliate with that label is a guy named Pico. And he was like, hey, we want to release some of your songs on vinyl here in Germany, because the style of music I was making was like super cheesy Eurodance. We called it hands up music, but it's like Cascada, Every Time We Touch, DJ Sammy, Heaven, like Bass Hunter, Dota, those kinds of tracks. That's what I was making at the time when I was 15, and I had a couple, like I got paid like, 3,000 euro for one of those releases, and being 15 years old, that was such a huge deal. And I remember like my dad being impressed. The very first show that I played was at a club called Motive in Santa Cruz, California, and I had been like making music for maybe 6 years at that point. I was probably 18 years old when I did my first gig, and I was not like a DJ. So I'm not really doing like EDM anymore, but at the time I was making like banger EDM. We actually didn't call it that yet. That word came out about like a year and a half after I first started touring. We just were calling it Electro House at the time. I had a song that unexpectedly went to the #1 slot on this really important chart of this website called Beatport. It was my first track under my own name, and it went to the #1 slot. And God, I remember like I was on vacation with my family at the time, and it was right at the beginning of when you could get like 3G on a or like, I don't even remember what it was, 1G on a phone at the time. And I didn't have a phone, but my mom did, and I would check this chart every day, and it was like number 97, and then it went to number 89, and then kept going up and up until it reached #1. And suddenly I started getting these emails and calls from bookers around the US being like, hey, can you come DJ our party? I'd never DJ'd before in my life. I was just a producer. So I really quickly taught myself, like I bought a controller from Guitar Center, really quickly taught myself. And that ended up being one of the greatest assets for me, was that I just did it differently from how other people did it. Like at that time, people were mixing songs, like playing out the full track, and I'm being sort of literal ADHD kid I was like playing like drop to drop to drop, mixing super quickly, almost more like how you like mix like double dropping stuff, like how drum and bass DJs would out here, and I think that helped set me apart at the time. Now all of this is fairly irrelevant now because I'm not doing nearly as much DJing. My shows are like live shows and I'm singing and playing, but yeah, that first gig. Okay, sorry, one other funny story about this first gig. I had planned out what I was gonna do, and I got to the club for the sound check, and there was another DJ there, and he was like, oh, like, there's this trick you can do for your intro where you'll like grab a little snippet of the audio and you can repeat it really quickly, so it'll kind of go like, dum, 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 that sort of sound, right? And he's like, that'll be a great thing for you to do for your intro. And I was just like a deer in headlights. I was just like, this guy seems like he knows what he's talking about. I have no clue what I'm doing, so I'm just gonna do what he said. I had not practiced that move nearly enough. It sounded so shitty. It just sounded like I instantly came out the gates and just fucked up as hard as possible. But the rest of the set went well after that, but I just totally bricked it with my intro. Yeah. I'm pretty sure, I would have to look back at this, but I think the very first festival I played was a rave in San Bernardino called Fuzzy Fest. Yeah, I don't remember that much about it. I remember I was playing right before Skrillex, and I remember he just killed it. It was so good. And I remember myself thinking that it's like a rave, so I have to play lots of like ravey vocal music, like kind of like Molly type music, like soft ethereal vocals. And I did a lot of that when I was first starting, like doing what I thought I was supposed to do. Like I think something I've learned as I've gotten older is that like probably a better path to being a real artist and doing is contrasting what people are doing. EDM and like trance and the stuff that I was doing at the time was really uncool, but I should have like leaned into that twice as hard rather than trying to not stick out and like not being the nail that sticks out and getting hammered down. I should have like stuck out further, and like I should have done like a full like UK hardcore and like trance and Japanese gabber. Like that's what I should have done, is like gone the exact opposite of the expectation, because it would have been so much more memorable and cool and more of what I'm into. So that's a recurring lesson for me, is to like not pander. Check it out. So for the encore of my show, I play my song called Get Your Wish, and in the music video for that, I'm wearing this like striped shirt, and I'm standing on this little platform of sky or like ocean. Imagine like a little laptop where like there's, the floor is like the water and the back wall is like the sky. I'm standing on it, and I'm completely drenched head to toe in water. I'm like with a mic, and I'm like moving around and dancing, just like completely drenched. And so for the encore of my show, I play that song, and I go and I pour a full bottle of water onto my head, and I go out and like my hair's all dripping and stuff like that. And so the first thing I do when I get off stage is usually I just like grab a towel. But I usually talk to like my tour manager and be like, oh my God, it's so sick. Like, especially on this tour, especially on this Europe tour, just like every show I'm like, how can we continue to maintain this level of energy? I've been so stunned by like how every crowd on this Europe tour has known the most obscure songs of mine, singing them all the way to the back. Like even the guy who's who's supporting the whole tour, James Ivey, is a good friend of mine. Like they know all of his songs. Like it's been so good out here. So recently, like my after the show ritual is like just gushing about how great it is. And yeah, then I like look at my tagged videos on Instagram and try to find ones that like capture how it really felt, and the towel on my head, yeah, like just drying off, yeah. I have a real ritual about releasing new music. When I release, so I generally, in general, I tend to avoid social media because I just like, there have been times where it was just so upsetting for me and so addictive. And when I release a song, I definitely am looking at social media because I just like want to see the reactions, right? I get so like hyped up and get so much adrenaline that I start shivering, and like I get really like cold. And so what I did on every Nurture single release is I was actually bringing my phone into the shower and I had like hot water on me because I would be shivering. I would just be like reading reactions, like texting my friends back, just like just like the most intense feeling of adrenaline and excitement, and then like seeing people's reactions to certain lyrics and to certain moments musically, and like seeing the things that people compare it to, all that stuff is pretty gratifying. So yeah, I'm like sitting in the shower on my phone. It's really bizarre behavior, but that's what I do when I release a song. I should stop that. It's weird.